Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this first installment of a Clinically Paragon Discussion. This is a new segment that we put together with our partners at Paragon Nutrition and Fitness. These will be hopefully every month, just more informational meetings and discussions that we want to provide to you guys on specific topics around supplements and other health related items. We will feature either Paul Scheckelman or Paul Yanzer of Paragon Nutrition and Fitness and just talk about different things. Paul Scheckelman is a very accomplished CrossFit athlete and firefighter, and Paul Yanzer is just unbelievably smart when it comes to this stuff. So, in this first one, we talk about vitamin D in the winter and things you can do to help optimize your levels, make sure you're taking care of yourself, and that things are going to be set up well for you to get through the winter where you don't get full exposure to sunlight. So, please check it out. Let us know what you think. I hope you take away a couple key points about vitamin D and its importance.
Yeah, potentially. So like aside from like vitamin D is great for all of these diseases and it helps prevent or when you have an adequate supply of vitamin D, your risk for disease and cancer is much lower. So I kind of got into just figure out if I can learn why that is. I found, I guess, some interesting things, but probably be better if you guys started with your questions.
Okay. You got specific questions?
Well, I do actually have one, and I don't know if you might as well just start with it, I guess. But I was thinking maybe it'd be better towards the end, but we'll just start with it. So I haven't seen anything specific on this, but I've heard some people talk about now there's been all this push to take vitamin D. Can you actually take too much to the point where your body stops producing vitamin D or decreases its production just because it starts to become reliant on what you're taking? And like I said, I haven't really seen much out there with that. I've found a lot of good research supporting the supplementation of vitamin D, and I still recommend it to people, to patients and everything, until I find, something that proves otherwise. But I knew I had heard that, so I was just wondering your opinion on that.
Yeah, your body makes vitamin D via the sunlight from cholesterol in your skin. Is the short answer. So
like cholesterol is not bad for you? Not all cholesterol.
We can have a whole hour-long episode on that.
That will be for the next one. Yeah, that'll be for the next one.
So your body's always going to be producing vitamin D. There's not really a rate limiting step as long as you're getting the right amount of sunlight. A lot of information says that in the dead of winter in Wisconsin, we're probably not even able to produce vitamin D at any point during the day. Just because of the angle of the sun and the intensity of the light that you're getting. I haven't, I hear the information and a lot of people say it, but I haven't really looked into the exact mechanism of that or like what your body needs. And obviously, my skin color being pink because it's so pale, and yours being you're probably able to tan a little bit. We need different amounts of sunlight, and we can produce vitamin D from just different intensities of sunlight. So the only thing that you really have to worry about with taking exogenous vitamin D is vitamin D toxicity, and that's pretty hard to do, I think.
Have you seen upper limits on that?
It all depends on your levels, how much sunlight you're getting, and that's sunlight without sunscreen, sunlight without clothes on, or at least minimal clothing. I've seen research that's done 6 months of 50,000 IUs a week, and they're not hitting toxicity.
So that's where I was going to ask you if you had seen anything, because I haven't looked into it, but I remember when I was working with cross country and track in grad school, all of our like high risk, like stress injuries, stress fractures, reactions, the whole bit, especially with our female cross country runners, our physician, as part of that treatment plan, would prescribe just like a bolus of 50,000 IUs of vitamin D a week.
Yeah.
So it's one pill on Monday and you're set. And I know I don't remember it. I don't want to speak for it. I'll try and find the link. I know the Vitamin D Council is somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 a day per recommendation, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's Vitamin D Council says that. The government says no more than 4,000. Your recommended daily intake at 100%, I think for adults is 600 IUs, which people have been saying for years is a joke.
Right.
Yeah,
I think Kyle's point about too, like, I need to write these down more. Like Peter Attia, I think, the doctor. I think you've referenced him before, especially with the ketones. Yeah. It like he doesn't take any specific supplement like every day forever, because some of those things to allow your body to cycle off. So where you might not need it in the summer, because you're able to get out to sunlight in theory easier, or at least where we're living, that's the best time for you. But during the winter, are you truly going to be able to put it into your body that you can't produce it anymore, where you kind of like cycle on and off?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense to me. Someone like me who, when I was working at my last job, I was working in a basement lab all day for 8 to 12 hours a day.
Sounds like
get there in the winter is before the sun came up and leave after the sun went down.
Yep.
And never see the light of day. In the summer, I'd at least get to drive to work and drive home from work in daylight, but I'm still not hitting anything. So I was supplementing daily with 5,000 to 10,000 IUs. And towards the end of that, when I had my blood work done, I think I was in the 20s for nanograms per milliliter. So I was, even that was not, it wasn't getting my vitamin D levels up. Prior to that, I was up around 47. I think 2 years prior, which was right before I started that job.
I've seen a few that show that older individuals need it more because their kidneys maybe aren't quite working as well, so they're just not converting that as much. And obviously also then you have more of a increased risk for bone stuff, your osteoporosis and fractures and penia and all that good stuff. So a lot of good evidence, it looked like, especially for the older populations.
Yeah, and I think watching my parents and aunts and uncles and all of their friends age, the more they age, the more they're worried about skin cancer. Because we've had some of that in our family, and it's a real thing. So it's long sleeve shirts all the time, hats, sunscreen all the time, and I don't think that people are getting enough direct sunlight. Like shirts off, short shorts in the summer, just being the old guy, wearing short shorts in the summer. And you don't even have to do it for that long. You do it for work your way up, obviously, every week, maybe add a couple minutes per day to your exposure, so your body gets used to it and starts producing its own melanin. So maybe by the end of the summer, you'll be a little bit tan, at least in my case.
Time of day is going to be important too, like you said. If you're in the middle of the day versus morning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, obviously, middle of the day, you're going to get more direct sunlight, and you'll be able to produce it a bit more. But if you end the day with like a light pink tone to your skin that's gone by the next day, you're producing like 15 to 20,000 IUs.
They've quantified it, huh? I hadn't heard that. Interesting.
And obviously it's different for a lot of people, like especially people who turn pink a little bit easier, but that's why it's just like play around with what your body is capable of. Everybody's their own experiment, and that's why advice to one person doesn't always work for another person. If I say go out in the sun for half an hour with no sunscreen on in the middle of August and just try to get a tan, some people that's not enough. Some people it's just right. Other people you're going to be peeling a couple days later from sunburn. So it really is consistent sunlight to your tolerance and slowly build. Would be the safest way to go about doing that.
Another study I saw done in the cities, Minneapolis, so relatively similar latitude of us, and it looked at people that were from the United States, and then it had people, and I don't know what their nationality was or skin color, but then they had people like from, they had African Americans, and they had like people from actually East Africa, and then they had Native Americans. And 100% of the people that they tested in the study, and the study was people with like chronic musculoskeletal pain. So they were like in a certain category or whatever, but 100% of the people were deficient in vitamin D, which I thought was crazy, which it was probably a study size. Each group had about 90 participants, so a fair amount of people, which is crazy, And that's interesting. I feel like between, like you said, the complexion and everything, the skin is going to make a difference. I mean, that's a wide variety of skin types, and it's obviously important, But they did show with that study, though, that supplementation it improved the outcomes of those people, what they were dealing with their symptoms, which is good.
Yeah, supplementation when you're not able to get enough sunlight. There's a lot of studies that show that it is incredibly beneficial for, especially once you're in the deficient or even insufficient range. Do you know what their deficient range was? Like, was it 20 nanograms per milliliter?
I pulled up a bunch of studies here. I'm sure I can find it. It sounds like it was right in about that range because they had deficient, and then they also broke down the percentages of like, and I don't know how they described it, but like super deficient was maybe under 12 or something. And there were even a few that I think it was maybe 4 that it wasn't even detectable, which is unbelievable to me. And I feel like that would be a pretty easy case of like, start taking anything and it's going to probably be beneficial to you.
Yeah, I was reading I came across a study on breast cancer out of a medical journal in India. So dark skin complexion, and 96% of breast cancer patients were deficient, and I think theirs was less than 16 for deficiency. Incredibly low. And then 77% of their control or non-breast cancer patients were deficient in vitamin D. On top of that, they look at risk of metastases and survival rate, and the numbers for those were really high. So like if you're deficient or like under 12, the chances for metastases is huge. And I don't recall, and I didn't write down the percentage, but it was staggering. And then obviously survival rate goes way up if your vitamin D is solid, and that's with a lot of cancers. Yeah, even with skin cancer, I came across some information. If you're less than 16 nanograms per mil, your reoccurrence rate of melanoma is higher, almost double, and then your risk of death is almost double as well.
Do they speculate as to what it is? Is it the like antioxidant? Obviously, none of us are medical doctors, so we're not officially handing it out. But even with that, yeah, we'll just start there.
Vitamin D is responsible for, depending on who you ask, there's a wide number of gene gene response in the body or gene function in the body. So like 100, I've seen anywhere from 100. I think that was old, and they're coming out with more every year for what vitamin D is actually regulating in the body. 2010 paper said 200 different gene expressions, and then I've also seen 3% of the gene expressions in your body. So, there's a lot of evidence that suggests that many cancers are metabolic derangements. So if your gene expressions aren't working, your metabolism's you're not getting the energy that you need where you need it, when you need it, or even the ability to shut off genes or certain cellular functions at the right time to prevent those things.
That's powerful. That's really powerful. I mean, you look at how many lives that affects one incidence of cancer.
Right.
It's crazy. And you look at all the other studies of like just influenza, or the cold and flu season. You have those rates go up in the winter, and then there's several studies that show that it decreases that incidence if you're supplementing or increasing your levels. And I found another one with athletic performance and showing increase in the person's performance or endurance, and it said it wasn't as much of a indicator on a world-class level, with your elite athletes, but again, more in the older population or those individuals that aren't maybe quite right at the top. But either way, it's making a difference.
I feel like this would be one of those things that falls into that like one or like point percentages or 1% when you get up to the elite athletes. Like you're not going to see the huge jumps, but you're going to see this is a thing that if it's not paid attention to could be the difference between first and second at the world championships, just because it makes that big a difference on that small of a scale.
Yeah.
Did you, by chance, see anything regarding inflammation and vitamin D?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that it is a powerful anti-inflammatory from what I've understood.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
I was right there. You have, all these conditions that are inflammatory, from your heart diseases and arthritises, and the list is quite extensive.
Yeah, I'm sure I came across some of that too. Yeah, inflammation being a very root cause of a lot of diseases and conditions in the body. It would make sense that having adequate vitamin D supply would curb some inflammatory processes.
Mm-hmm. I think the main point is to get your levels checked and know where you're at. Get them in the range. So that's another question I was going to ask you. What have you seen as an ideal number to be at? Because we've thrown out a lot. I know that I've seen 40 to 70 is considered an ideal range. I don't know if I'd feel as comfortable in the 40s as I would in the upper end of that. And I know I've seen some sources that said you want to be a little bit closer to 80, even that 80 is ideal.
Yeah, 80 seems to be the ideal range. Your range when you get a test at the doctor's office is going to be 30 to 100 for normal. So I think I even had one doctor when I was right around 30 or sub 30. He said, "Well, it's pretty close to normal." So,
It's such a range.
not that bad. I was like, okay. But with the breast cancer thing again, over 50 nanograms per milliliter in one study had an 83% reduction in cancer, and the same study mentioned another study that said over 50 nanograms per milliliter, you had a 50% lower risk of colon cancer. And then charts that I had seen for normal, probably around 50 to 70, you're doing pretty good. If you're trying to combat some diseases or like you have cancer, trying to get it up above 70, closer to 80 or 90, seems to help with a lot of things based on information that I've seen.
The nice thing about supplementing too is the supplement itself is dirt cheap. You're really not going to find it a more cost-effective supplement to take. Pill. Right? Yeah. I mean,
It's not a horse pill.
It's not like that. That shouldn't hinder you. Right there. I can understand it. Maybe with some supplements, how it's going to break the bank after a while, but this isn't going to do that.
Vitamin D for the winter is not going to break the bank, even for half the year. So definitely a worthwhile investment.
I always rank it up there depending on what time of the year. Like if our athletes ever ask, like, what would you recommend if it's moving anything into winter? Like I'm always like some sort of like recovery protein supplement, fish oil, and then if it's closer to winter, I'll go vitamin D before like anything else we offer.
Yeah, for sure. Vitamin D and DHA actually do a lot together. Again, DHA being pretty prevalent in the retina, and then interacting with sunlight. Both of them act on, or both of them work with dopamine. So an increase in having proper levels of DHA and vitamin D will increase your dopamine levels, which staring at the screens like we're doing right now is lowering them. Or any.
We got F. Lux on, so it's nice and orange, so the blue light's not as violent to our eyes.
I didn't do that. I didn't know if my filter would go through to you guys or not.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious to see how it ends up looking at the end. But we'll see. I'm pretty sure it's just how it looks.
But yeah, low dopamine, you're gonna have addictive tendencies are gonna go up. Depression goes up. All of these neurological conditions, ADHD, they all go up. So staring at a screen all day, you're going to deplete your dopamine stores. You're going to burn through your vitamin D, and DHA also gets destroyed from the blue light. So all these things kind of work together in the brain to make sure everything's just working pretty well for you. So fish oil supplementation in the winter, I definitely recommend as well. Obviously during the summer as well. Fish oil has anti-inflammatory properties. So getting sunlight with proper fish oil supplementation, or probably even better, just eating some salmon once or twice a week. Gonna keep your sunburns down. Keep that inflammation low. I was reading a study recently, because I talk about sunlight so much and how important it is. And somebody asked me about cancer, skin cancer, and I said, I don't really think that it's all the sun doing it, because the sun is so important for every living thing on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Then came across a study showing kids with irritable bowel syndrome had a 6-fold greater increased risk of melanoma. So inflammation in the gut leading to an increased risk in skin cancer, which again comes down to inflammation and the gut and the skin and the brain all being interconnected.
Yeah, makes sense.
I know if I'm eating like garbage, I get a little bit of eczema on my skin. So gut and skin connected.
Yeah,
I get like a sinus infection.
Do you?
Yeah.
Oh, I
don't actually get like the infection, but I get the pressure right here.
I do as well.
As soon as I eat or drink things that I shouldn't all the time.
I think we.
Well, anything else, vitamin D? You got any other points you want to hit on?
Vitamin D, do we want to talk about winter tips for preventing issues?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So dopamine, kind of a big deal.
I've heard of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And if hanging out inside and staring at a screen all day, which a lot of people do at work, is going to lower your dopamine levels. You know, that happens because blue light in the eye activates monoamine oxidase in B, which depletes dopamine. So staring at the blue light screen activates the enzyme that depletes dopamine. So if you can, you guys have the blue light filter on your screen, or get some yellow glasses. I can't find mine.
Yeah, those are cheap.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, like $5 on Amazon or something.
Yep.
Make a huge difference. I started wearing those at work, and it moved my mental decline back every day, like a few hours, which was huge. I got a lot more work done. Yeah, so the monoamine oxidase, B destroying blue light. There's some, I guess, biohacks that you can do to take some antidepressants, which are generally considered like a last-ditch effort, are monoamine oxidase inhibitors. So they block that process from happening. You don't want to take those all the time, or if you are taking them, your risk of like serotonin toxicity increases, which people who take too much LSD, generally that's serotonin toxicity. So what you want to do. Anyways, there's a methylene blue is something that biohackers kind of take for cognitive benefits, and that works on the monoamine oxidase pathway. It inhibits that pathway, allowing you to keep your dopamine and other neurotransmitter levels up if there's things that are keeping them down. Also, cold therapy, cold thermogenesis. So, we don't have the sun to boost our dopamine levels in the winter, but something that does boost it is hanging out in the cold. So, in our modern world, we have these nice cozy homes that we keep at 72 degrees, or if you're bold and a little crazy, you keep them at 68.
I'm fighting that battle to try and make sure it stays at 68. I start sweating at 72.
Yeah. So daily, either take, like Wim Hof method is going to do all these things for you too. I think we've talked about that a little bit, but it's the cold showers, the cold exposure, and gradually ramping up with that, and then also breathing exercises, all benefit these pathways when the sun can't do it for you. So blue light filters either on your screens or through glasses, yellow glasses. Supplementation, methylene blue, berberine, which is in Flame Off, is also a monoamine oxidase inhibitor, specifically the B pathway, which depletes dopamine. And then cold therapy, which, if you haven't checked out the Wim Hof method, do that.
We'll definitely link that up, and maybe a podcast with that guy. He's nuts.
Yeah.
In a great way, but he's nuts.
Absolutely. You guys have any interest in doing that?
Wim Hof stuff?
Yeah.
We've talked about it, I don't know how many times, but neither one of us has ponied up the money to get the certification.
I think it'd be very cool to check out.
Same thing with gymnastics bodies, but I feel like I would tear everything, even starting it.
Intro gymnastics body stuff, and it's super slow. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sounds like it's a quite a process.
Yeah, it's like a 5-year, and you're moving out of beginner land process. But the benefits from doing that, I know Rob Wolf, he even said, I met with this guy and had him on my podcast multiple times, and it took me like 4 or 5 years to finally do his program. He's like 20 minutes 3 times a week, and everything is better. And he's in his mid-40s now. Does Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so flexibility is huge there. And then, but
It's not a bad time commitment though.
yeah, anybody who sticks with it tends to see massive gains across the board, not just in flexibility, but stability as well, and just pure strength with the body weight movements.
It's important.
Yeah. Yeah, those are two programs that I've also wanted to delve into, but just haven't, for various reasons.
Cool. Well, thanks for giving us your knowledge and expertise.
Thank you for having me on.